Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to skip the long intros today because the stakes of our source material are just too high and we need to jump right into the action. We're exploring an incredible historical and literary intersection of crisis, diplomacy, and brilliant strategy. We are going to look at how words, when used with absolute precision, can literally alter the course of history.
It really comes down to a life or death question. Can one person's words actually stop a war? I mean, when brute force seems totally inevitable, can a well-crafted conversation truly triumph over the sword? Well, as you'll see, our sources prove that ancient communication techniques were just as sophisticated and, honestly, just as effective as modern hostage negotiations.
Just picture the terrifying reality for a second. You've got the thundering crash of battering rams literally shaking the stone walls. Thousands of innocent lives are on the line. There's zero escape and absolutely no reinforcements are coming. This is the exact nightmare scenario described in the ancient text of 2 Samuel 20, where King David's army, led by the utterly ruthless general Joab, is laying a devastating siege to the city of Abel Beth Maacah.
So, how exactly did we arrive at such a chaotic moment? Well, following the collapse of Absalom's rebellion against King David, the kingdom of Israel was left incredibly fragile. Enter a new rebel named Sheba, son of Bichri. He seizes the moment, ignites another revolt, and flees north, eventually holding up right in the fortified city of Abel Beth Maacah. General Joab pursues him relentlessly, and without asking a single question, Joab immediately prepares to destroy the entire city just to get to this one guy.
Which brings us to part 1, a masterclass in diplomacy. The wise woman steps up.
Right as the city is about to fall, an unnamed hero, known simply as the Wise Woman of Abel, steps out onto the ramparts. Now, she isn't a soldier, right? But she brings something way more powerful to the battlefield. Over the deafening roar of the siege, she boldly calls out and demands direct access to the commander. She says, "Listen to the words of your servant." And amazingly, Joab actually replies, "I am listening." Just by securing this quick verbal covenant, she instantly hits pause on the irreversible violence. It's brilliant. By claiming the humble title of servant while simultaneously demanding an audience, she seamlessly fuses humility with absolute authority. What's truly fascinating here is the sheer strategic brilliance of her argument. She reminds Joab that her city actually has a historic reputation as a peaceful, faithful mother in Israel, a place famous for giving wise counsel. She expertly maneuvers the whole negotiation to isolate the guilt, making it crystal clear that Sheba is the true threat here, not the city's innocent inhabitants.
Notice the staggering contrast in their approaches. Joab operates with a military mindset, collective punishment, brute force, just destroying everything in his path to achieve his objective. But the wise woman? She operates with a diplomatic mindset, isolated justice, clear dialogue, and preserving life. Ultimately, she convinces the city to execute the rebel Sheba and, well, toss his head over the wall. Instantly, the siege ends and Joab withdraws.
Moving on to part 2, the science of persuasion. Principles of conflict resolution.
Pivoting away from that thrilling, if a bit grim, narrative, we can academically analyze exactly why her tactics worked so flawlessly. Her strategy perfectly reflected ancient peacemaking laws. In fact, our sources point out that her actions mirror Deuteronomy 24:16, which mandates individual accountability, rather than making a whole community suffer for one person's crime. She knew the exact protocol: initiate dialogue before laying siege, secure verbal commitments that bind both parties to a fair procedure, and always distinguish corporate welfare from individual criminality.
This brings us to part 3, women who win with words. If we zoom out a bit, we find that the wise woman of Abel wasn't just an isolated incident. Scriptural and scholarly wisdom reveals 2 other brilliant biblical negotiators who use specific communication frameworks to overcome vastly superior forces. We are talking about Miriam and Abigail.
When we look at the communication models identified by specialists, a really clear pattern emerges. First up, we have Miriam. As a young slave girl facing a princess of Egypt, Miriam uses empathy and incentives. She intuits the princess's conflict over a doomed Hebrew baby and offers her an immediate practical solution, a real incentive to safely adopt him. Then we have Abigail, facing an angry, heavily armed King David. She uses group vision. She taps directly into David's destiny, reminding him of his noble character and pointing out that needless bloodshed would completely ruin his future legacy. And finally, our wise woman uses logic, presenting Joab with the inescapable legal fact that destroying a loyal city directly violates their shared covenant.
And that leads us to part 4, archaeology of ancient seers, the reality behind the text.
Now, it's one thing to do a literary analysis, but let's actually look at the fascinating physical reality behind the text, unearthed directly from the dirt of northern Israel. Archaeologists Nava Panitz-Cohen and Robert Mullins have been excavating Tel Abel Beth Maacah. And get this, they discovered massive Iron Age II fortifications and 10th century BCE structures. This proves without a doubt that a substantial, independent community existed right there at the exact time the biblical text claims General Joab laid his siege. Even more intriguing, they found rooms filled with cultic paraphernalia inside a large public building.
Which brings us to this absolutely staggering number, 425. That is the exact number of animal ankle bones discovered inside a single jar, just sitting on an Iron Age podium within that courtyard.
These bones are known as ostrogale. Historically, ostrogale were used all across the ancient Near East for ritual activities like cleromancy, casting lots for divination, and to provide political advisory. So finding 425 of them in one single place, that strongly suggests Abel Beth Maacah wasn't just some regular town. It may have been a genuine, recognized center for oracular wisdom.
And this forces us to ask a really compelling question. Were these wise women just shrewd, clever locals trying to survive? Or did they hold formal, officially recognized roles as female seers who actively guided their society? While the text doesn't explicitly call them seers, their undeniable authority and this new archaeological evidence definitely suggests they filled a highly respected, deeply formal public role.
Ancient sages believe the wise woman of Abel perfectly embodied this exact proverb from Ecclesiastes. Wisdom is more valuable than weapons of war. By simply knowing exactly how to speak, who to address, and what logical strings to pull, she literally neutralized a battering ram and saved thousands of lives with a single conversation.
Which leaves us with this final thought for you. Empathy, logic, and a clear vision can disarm the absolute harshest of adversaries. So in your own life, how will you use words to win your next conflict? Thank you so much for joining me for today's explainer, and I can't wait to dive into our next topic with you.